Welcome to Cities on the Move. I'm your host, Stephanie Passingham. The older we get, the more quickly time goes by, and here we are again at the end of another year. Here at KSMQ, we are so grateful for the many people who help make all the locally based programming, like Cities on the Move, happen. From the staff to the advisory teams to viewers and the guests themselves, we couldn't do it without each one of you. I enjoy looking through previous episodes and remembering the great stories people have shared. We've compiled a few for you this evening to help highlight the people, places, and events that make southern Minnesota and northern Iowa a great place to live. I hope you enjoy them as well. People are our greatest asset. World-class pianists, homespun bakers, and poet laureates are sprinkled throughout the region. Let's revisit some of their stories. Ian Shapinski has been performing for 50 years and has been invited to some of the most prestigious concert halls. Let's find out more about this talented pianist's career.
Hi, I'm Ian Shapinski. I'm a concert pianist and teacher. Well, my grandmother was a pianist. My father was a great cellist, he was, and my mother is a great cellist, and she teaches now. And the first sounds I remember were my dad playing the cello, and I love music. And I loved to play underneath my grandmother's piano. Unfortunately, my parents wouldn't let me take lessons till I was 7. They didn't want a neurotic child prodigy with nervous breakdowns and other mental disorders, so I had to wait till I was 7. I got accepted to Juilliard when I was 15 in college, and then I worked with Yasha Zaidi privately for 10 years. I have 2 degrees from the Juilliard School. Well, I started playing professionally since I was 9 with my dad, cello piano concerts. So I knew when I was a very young child what I was going to do all my life. I didn't know whether it was going to be easy or difficult. I started going to Europe when I was 19. My dad and we played in Paris, London, and Brussels. And it was the first trip to Europe, and I started going to Europe for 25, 30 years after that. And it gave me a taste of just flying someplace, getting off the plane, going to the hotel, and either playing that night or playing the next day. Became just going to work. It was a routine. I think you have to be prepared like a doctor, 24 hours a day. You have to be on call at any time I carry on 5 to 10 solo programs in my head all the time. I have learned 100 piano concertos. People ask me, some conductors ask me, you know this concerto? And 99.99% of the time I know it. In 1979, I was at the bedside of a manager in Connecticut, a Dutch manager. And he got a phone call that his pianist, her mother had passed away. And they asked me, they looked at me, and he said to me, would you like to go to Berlin tomorrow? I flew that night and played in Berlin. It was the best, the most difficult place to play, the hardest place to get a good review, and I got a very nice one. And playing at the Berliner Hochschule, it was like the most famous concert hall in Germany, and it was a wonderful concert. I think that was one of the most interesting places I played. People tell me after a concert that I have some natural technique or something, and I say to myself, if they knew that I practiced that particular piece maybe 1,700 or 1,900 times, it would be pretty natural. I just can't accept something when it's not perfected well. I just really bothers me if I don't have it right. That's something that's part of inside me. Sometimes I wonder when you walk on stage, before I start the concert, I sometimes look at my hands and I say, am I really going to play a concert today? I sit down and then I touch the keys and go into this other world and I just play it. I think when you wake up in the morning and you think of things you like to do most in the world, and it's like, it's sort of like, you might say, one of the loves of your life and your soul, something you can't live without.
Kay Kluko is a poet from Conger, Minnesota. Let's find out what happened when she discovered her poems didn't have to rhyme.
I'm Kay McMasters Kluko. I live on the western edge of Conger, and when I was about 60 years old, I suddenly decided to start writing poetry. I've always been interested in poetry. Even before I was in school, my grandmother used to recite poetry when she was washing dishes, and I would just stand there in awe, and she really liked Robert Louis Stevenson, and she would recite it. And so that gave me a love of it. And then in first grade, I went to country school. We had to have a piece that we gave for Mother's Club. And they gave me a poem to memorize, Choosing Shoes. And that did it. I was hooked. Choosing Shoes by Frida Wolf. New shoes, red and pink and blue shoes. Tell me, what would you choose if they would let us buy? Buckle shoes, bow shoes, pretty pointed toe shoes, strappy cappy low shoes. Let's have some to try. Bright shoes, white shoes, dandy dance by night shoes, perhaps a little tight shoes. Like some? So would I, but flat shoes, fat shoes, stump along like that shoes. Wipe them on the mat shoes, that's the sort they buy. I got a chance to go to the Split Rock Arts program in the summer of 2001. Each day our assignment was to do a story from our childhood in a different way. One day it was like a newspaper article, and one day it was like an essay, and one day it was a poem. And I struggled with that one, wrote a very short one, and then we had to read them to the whole class the next day. And when I got up, I apologized and I said, I am sorry, but I just have a problem with rhyming. It sounds so stilted. And the teacher looked at me and she says, well, what makes you think it has to rhyme? Well, I thought it did, and then she gave an explanation that poetry really does not have to rhyme. It's a rhythm, and it also is an economy of words. Well, economy of words, I never was really much of a talker. They hit the spot, and so I tried it not rhyming, and it worked for me, and so then I was off. First one that I ever had published was called Pretty Boys. Sometimes there were pretty boys that caught my eye when I was young. They had dark hair, pale eyes, beautiful white teeth, and sly smiles. The first one I remembered was George Upcraft in band lessons in 5th grade. I love poetry because it gives me a chance to express myself that I'm not always good at with spoken word. Those boys always seemed so, dare I say the word, sexy. My parents were not impressed with those pretty boys, but to my teenaged eyes, the pretty boys were exotic, stuff daydreams were made of. I remained sensible on the outside, befriended the good boys, married a blonde darling that sported a flat top, and my mother liked him too, but I still remember the pretty boys.
Jeremy and Yuko were both convinced by their instructor to start competing in dance. They have found it to be very challenging and rewarding. Let's hear their story now.
My name is Jeremy Anderson, and this is my dance partner, Yuko Taniguchi. We are current 9 American-style dance championships for the state of champions for the state of Minnesota. We reside in Rochester, Minnesota. I wish I had started dancing when I was a small child. Unfortunately, the opportunities for ballroom dancing weren't there weren't as many opportunities for ballroom dancing when I was a small child. I didn't actually get into partnership dancing until I went to college at in Fargo, North Dakota, at North Dakota State. And there was a social dance Phi Ed class, and I ended up taking that. And at the time, it was Fargo, North Dakota is mostly 2-step country dancing, and that didn't really sing with me too much. So it wasn't until I got to Denver, where I lived for 3 years, I started getting into swing dancing. And when I moved back to Rochester, I started getting into the ballroom dancing.
I started dancing in 2006. At the end of kickboxing class, the owner of the fitness center, the couple, they were practicing salsa routine, salsa practice, and I just thought that looked really fun. So they taught me a few steps, and I was I just fell in love with salsa dancing then.
We danced competitively in all 9 American-style dances. So that means cha-cha, rumba, swing, bolero, mambo, waltz, foxtrot, tango, and Viennese waltz. The big benefit for competitive dancing for me is that I always want to be a better social dancer. And having a goal, a competition to get better and hopefully win, it gives you a goal to strive for, to focus your practice on, to become better. Otherwise, you're just taking lessons, and who cares if you get really much better, as long as you keep learning something new every day.
Overall, as an adult, and I have seen competitive dancing before, you just never think that you can do it, and oh, I'm not that good or so. So it takes quite a bit of encouragement, and her direct approach was very helpful. And once I did it, I felt really great about it. Right before competition, we are practicing daily, and we probably practice maybe 2 hours every day, and then longer during the weekend. But before, if we have a bit of time between competitions, then we do probably longer, intense practice during the weekend, and maybe a few times during the week.
Right. There's USA Dance. We host one dance a month. Tango Society of Rochester hosts one Milonga a month, which is an Argentine tango dance. And then there's the Blue Moon Ballroom, which hosts numerous dances a month. Their schedule varies because they also rent out the place for weddings and stuff. On top of that, the Rochester Salsa community also hosts dance. There's required costuming for different levels of social or competitive dancing. At what are called the Silvis levels, they have very strict guidelines of what you can wear, but once you get up to the open skill levels, which is what Yuko and I dance, then the opportunity for costuming becomes a lot more. These are specially tailored for us.
And you have to be very careful what feels comfortable and what looks good, what works. After all, this is an athletic move that we have to do in this costume, so while it's very sparkly, it cannot get in my way. So it feels as though like wearing a bathing suit, and then has all this extravagant thing on top. So it's a fun, enjoyable activity that requires skill. So I think it's even for that reason, I think it actually makes it more enjoyable.
Helen Groen enjoys entering contests at the fair, especially those for baking. Pies and bread are some of her specialties. She recently came by to share a sampling of her goodies. Let's meet her now.
My name is Helen Groen. I have lived in Austin about 4.5 years. I am formerly a full-time South Dakotan. Lived south of Sioux Falls all of my life till I moved here. Baking has always been a part of our life and our family. My mother baked bread probably 2-3 times a week. We never had home or bought-in bread. We always had everything baked. She baked everything from scratch, of course, in those days. And we just grew up. That was part of our lives. We learned to bake as we got older. And so we just, I have 2 sisters, and we still all 3 are bakers and sewers, and just the things that we learned as children growing up. I do still bake because I just like to. It's a habit, and it's a fun activity for me. And I've never had any friends or neighbors who have turned down homemade bread or homemade pie or homemade anything. So it's just a joy for me to do it and share it. I guess I bake probably as the urge, or if I just feel like it. Pie I do often because people don't do that very much anymore, and it's just fun to share it, and particularly at peach time, which is now, and apple time in the fall. That I do more often because of the accessibility and availability of it. I like to do the whole grain breads. There's oatmeal bread too that's very good, but I have one that I tore out of a magazine many years ago that has got the flaxseed in and a bran seed also in, and then it also has, it's 9-grain cereal. You get it in the cereal department, but it makes a wonderful granary bread with lots of fiber and great taste. So I just like to try. I'm always tearing some out of a magazine or something to try, just for fun. I think you just kind of can sense how tough it's going to be. You get too much flour. You got to keep them a little bit hard to handle and squeeze it in the pan carefully, but that gets your flaky or pie crust. I make buns a lot. Years ago we had a good bun recipe, and I still do that. And one thing that I make with the buns is there is a recipe, it's called again, it's a German recipe. They're called Millerstone or beer rocks or something. To me, they're similar to a runza, and that is a bun with your meat in it. I do the fair just because it's something, again, we grew up with. I was in 4-H. My mother took things because our county fair had also an open class, and so she took things, and I had an aunt that was very firm about taking things to the fair. She did up until the year before she died. I like to share it. It's just something I grew up with. It's part of my heritage, and so I just do it because I do it. I don't know how else best to describe that.
Larry Reese is a member of the Freeborn County Kennel Club who enjoys showing his dogs in obedience. He and his good friend Cody tell us why they enjoy working together. Let's take a look.
Hi, I'm Larry Reese. I live in Otana, and I'm a dog lover. I have brought Cody along with me today, and I belong to the Kennel Club in Freeborn County, and I also work with Steele County 4-H'ers. There I help train their dogs. And my first dog was a Shetland sheepdog named Penny, and we got her, or some people call them miniature collie. We got her, my wife and I, in about 1984, and we wanted to raise puppies with her, so we had 2 litters out of her. We ended up with 3 Shelties: Penny, Muffin, and Luke. We decided to start showing Penny after we had been in obedience class for a while, and we took her there because we wanted to solve a few behavior problems like barking all the time, or not coming when called, that type of thing. So, and we had some success there, and then we just kept on training and showing until we got her utility dog title, which is the 3rd level of obedience. It's novice, and then open, and then utility. So I had good success with her. When you first go in novice obedience, you go into the ring with your dog on leash, and then you do some heeling exercises such as forward, halt, forward, left turn or right turn, a fast and a slow. And then 2 people will come into the ring and stand about 8 feet apart, and then you'll do a figure 8 around those people. And your dog has to be right along your left side all the time in heel position. You can always work with the dog from the day that you get it by but serious obedience training, probably not till 6 months. But I mean, you can interact with the dog, socialize him, which is part of training. Teach him to walk along beside you. You could put a leash on him, but be gentle with him. Teach him to come to you when called, and then reward him. When he does come to you, reward him with treats or praise. The thing I like most about showing dogs is while we are showing, and if the dog is doing a really good job in the ring, and then afterwards, if I know that he's done his best, that's the most satisfying part to me.
Our region is blessed with some wonderful places we can enjoy. Fishing and canoeing, preserving heritage treasures, and visualizing the universe are just a few activities that can be found. Minnesota Sportsman magazine named Lea Lake one of the top 7 walleye opener lakes in the state. Let's join Larry Anderson to learn more about this local fishing hotspot.
The walleye, state fish of Minnesota, is a prize catch for anglers across the region. Many people have family traditions that take them to the far north of the state, or even into Canada, to pursue this tasty game fish. Well, if walleye is your heart's desire, now you can find plenty right here in the region. In 2009, Minnesota Sportsman magazine named Albert Lea Lake as one of the top 7 opening day walleye lakes in Minnesota. Local councilman and angler Larry Anderson describes this area lake.
The Albert Lea Lake is a huge body of water. It is about 2,600 acres large. It has 24 miles of lake shore. It's basically considered a shallow prairie lake. It has a boom and bust feature where they consider it as to be a good productive lake where fish grow rapidly because the water warms and there's a lot of food source. But the average depth is right now close to 3.5 or 4 feet.
Despite the shallow depth, it was no surprise to local fishermen that Albert Lea Lake could produce a strong walleye population.
Albert Lea becomes a good walleye lake because there is a very good abundance of the fish that they need for food, as in perch and other minnows and so on like that, and bullheads. And so they introduced them in Albert Lea Lake because the timing was perfect, because with all of the dead fish in the bottom, the walleye would grow at a rapid rate because of the food source. With Albert Lea being listed in the top walleye lakes in the state, I was not surprised, because we've seen people catch walleyes here in huge numbers, and it was actually on one of the radio shows it was listed as the #1 walleye lake in the state.
While fishing techniques and locations are often top secret, Larry shares a few of his favorite strategies for catching walleye on Albert Lea Lake.
Albert Lea Lake, because it's so shallow and large, a lot of people use planer boards, so you get your crankbaits, your Lindy rigs out far away from the boat and in behind it, so that the boat traffic inside the lake does not disturb the walleyes. The other thing that some people do is they have a collapsible cane pole. What they do is they'll collapse that out, and then they'll put a crankbait on there or their spinner bait, and they'll hold it out so it gets about 14 feet away from the side of the boat. Some people like that better because they say there's better sensitivity. We can use all kinds of bait, ranging from you've got leeches, minnows, night crawlers, waxworms. You can use about anything you want between artificial and live bait. Best fishing has been done with a real light bobber.
Sometimes our greatest treasures are located right in our own backyard. Riverland Community College quietly goes about its business of educating our region. Let's take a look.
Riverland Community College serves more than 4,000 students in southern Minnesota through a variety of programming options. Accredited by the Higher Learning Commission of the North Central Association of Colleges and Schools, Riverland's mission is inspiring learning for living through a personalized educational environment. The college takes a number of approaches when providing this personalized education, which is one of the reasons Riverland President Dr. Terrence Lease was drawn to the college.
What attracted me to Riverland was the opportunity to work with a comprehensive community college. It combines what used to be the old junior college and just the first 2 years of a 4-year degree. It also has the career and technical education programming that the vocational institutes used to offer. Beyond that, it has developmental education for students who are preparing to enter college and be successful at that level. Have a large customized training program, and that works with employers and their workers. So it's just the comprehensive nature of the college that really impressed me.
The lifelong learning perspective is apparent in course offerings. High school students can gain college credits while completing their high school diploma. Riverland offers the traditional 2-year degree options, and they also work closely with area businesses to develop customized training programs to meet needs that become apparent in the community. One of their new programs addresses a growing demand in the wind energy field.
This coming fall, we'll be starting a program in wind turbine technology, which will prepare technicians to install, maintain, operate, repair wind turbines. And that's a growing part of the alternate energy field, very big in southern Minnesota and northern Iowa.
Another area of expertise and advanced technology involves training allied health professionals utilizing state-of-the-art simulation equipment. The lab features computer-driven mannequins complete with lifelike chest movements, heart and lung sounds, and vocalizations. Students in the Riverland nursing and radiography programs use the simulation mannequins to practice skills in situations they might not necessarily encounter in their real-world clinical rounds.
We've had some wonderful partnerships recently with other colleges, workforce investment boards, Workforce Development Incorporated.
A couple of coffee drinkers decided they enjoyed their local coffee shop so much they wouldn't let it close. Let's take a closer look as they share their secrets for a good cup of coffee.
For many, the smell of a freshly brewed cup of coffee is what gets their engines running in the morning. This once utilitarian drink has become the new wine, with unending flavors and variations. Today, coffee is one of the most popular beverages worldwide. Lori Wiebesick and Julie Anderson were two coffee lovers who enjoyed visiting over their morning cup at a local coffee shop in old downtown Mankato. When they heard it was going to close, they took measures into their own hands and created Bliss Java chocolate and more.
This was a coffee shop for about 5 years before we became owners of the coffee shop itself. I think we had such good time sitting out on the patio that when they announced that they were going to close this place, we had just thought, we just can't let that go to waste. We loved it out there. So we're a pretty traditional coffee shop, I think, in that we offer coffee and espresso drinks and smoothies, and then we have panini sandwiches.
And their coffee draws a diverse crowd.
In the morning we will, generally speaking, have probably a little bit more of a professional crowd that's working on projects here quite often. Then in the evening, I think we tend to get a lot more college students and younger people, and I mean, they're interspersed and they interact pretty well most of the time.
And the coffee is what they all come for. Because Lori and Judy enjoy coffee so much themselves, they make sure they're offering the freshest, best coffee and coffee drinks they can to their customers.
I'm pretty much addicted to the French roast. I have that pretty much every day, and we have it on the menu every day just because it's a really good coffee. So it's kind of like a house standard in some ways. We also then just vary our light roast throughout the day and every day. Coffee is very much like grapes in that it picks up the essence of the environment that it's growing in. So if you have anything from like Ethiopia, you'll taste a lot of blueberry because there's a strong fruit element there, and other places will be earthy and they might have vanilla. And so it's kind of interesting because even from one country to another, you'll get different characteristics from different growing regions.
Bliss works with B&W Roasting to secure their freshly roasted beans. Chrissy Kelsch explains the different variety of beans.
There are two main types of coffee beans. There's the Arabica bean and the Robusta bean.
The Seed Savers Exchange started with just one variety, and now they have thousands. Join us as we explore how seeds are saved and why it is so important.
As we curl up by the fire on these cold January nights, many of us are eagerly devouring the seed catalogs that are flooding the mailbox this time of year. Dreams of tasty tomatoes and heirloom beans like Grandma used to grow dance in our heads. Fortunately for us, one of the nation's premier seed-saving organizations is located right here in the region. The Seed Savers Exchange, located in Dakota, Iowa, is dedicated to saving and sharing more than 25,000 different varieties of heirloom vegetables. Membership manager Stephanie Hughes recounts their humble beginning.
Seed Savers was started in 1975 by Diane Ott Whaley and Kent Whaley. They had received some seeds from Diane's grandfather, Morning Glory and a tomato. And a couple years after that, her grandfather passed away, and she realized that if she didn't continue saving these seeds, they would no longer exist. And together they realized that there were probably a lot of other people in the same situation saving their family's heirlooms. So they started out just with little magazine articles looking for other seed savers. Started out as a very small network of gardeners, about 8 people the first year, and it's just kept growing. Moved to Dakota in 1984. We've got this wonderful facility here. And right now we have about 8,000 different members.
The membership of the Seed Savers Exchange helps disperse a wonderful variety of plants provided by the membership itself, as well as those saved by the staff at the exchange.
Anyone can become a member of Seed Savers. There is an annual fee, and what members get is a large publication that has over 13,000 different vegetable varieties in it. Those are varieties that are offered by other members.
Seed saving is a fairly straightforward process that can be practiced by any home gardener. Lindsay Schmitz explains that it all starts with a very ripe plant.
For the cucumbers, you always want the fruit to be overripe, but with peppers and tomatoes and stuff, they can just be regular. It's always easier to get the seeds out when they're all squishy and nasty, but it's not quite so pleasant. In the case of the tomatoes, we let them ferment and mold, usually just overnight, and that helps break down the little goopy stuff that's around the actual seed. For these, they have to be washed the same day that they're processed, otherwise they get kind of nasty and start to germinate and other things that we don't like. We've got a sink and a sprayer, and you just dump them all into a sieve and spray away.
The Upper Iowa River is an adventure treasure that many of us may not know about. It's a scenic and friendly river to canoe. Let's take a quick float down this local natural resource.
The KSMQ region has a full range of outdoor adventures offering recreation fun for everyone. Canoeing is a favorite pastime that has been enjoyed for centuries. The word canoe comes from the native word kinu, meaning dug out. Some of the earliest canoes were simply hollowed out tree logs. Today's canoes benefit from modern technology, though the basic design has not changed all that much. Many areas in the region offer canoeing opportunities. One of the most beautiful areas is the Upper Iowa River. In fact, National Geographic's Adventure magazine named the Upper Iowa River as one of the top 100 adventures in the United States. Dwayne Hershka operates a canoe livery service near Cresco, Iowa. He explains why the area is a must-do for canoe enthusiasts.
Well, this part of Iowa is kind of not atypical of Iowa because it's got the bluffs and stuff like this. Also, we got about the cleanest water around the state of Iowa too. We don't have, well, it's got a fast current to it, so whatever runoff we do get, it kind of cleans itself up. Scenic wise, it's one of the 100 things to do according to National Geographic in the United States because of the scenic value. And the most scenic value on this river is like from the Kendallville area down to this campground down here. That's where they're going to pick up the Chimney Rock area and the High Bluff area.
Wildlife is also common along the river, though summer foliage demands a sharp eye.
Oh, we see a lot of eagles, some blue herons, a lot of birds. When we get foliage on like we got right now, it's not quite as easy to see wildlife as it is in early spring or late fall when the foliage starts dying down.
Fishermen even have a chance to catch trout, smallmouth, or catfish.
Fishing is not too bad. Some people have good luck and some people don't. Don't know what. It's usually the fishermen that create the luck. It's not so much just putting a pole out there.
The canoe season is a long one if you're willing to bundle up a bit to stay warm.
We tried getting going 1st of April and we run till about the 1st of October. Well, about the 15th of October actually.
The extended season allows many organizations and educational institutions to include this activity in their curriculum.
Schools got a lot of these incorporated in their curriculum, and also colleges.
The Mayo High School Planetarium is a world-class facility located right here in the region. It is open to the public and should be on your must-see list this year. Let's check out this great local resource.
You can tell instantly when you visit the website or walk into the classroom. The Mayo High School Planetarium is no ordinary learning center. Planetarium Director Lawrence Moscati has been opening the eyes and minds of Rochester and the surrounding area students to the wonders of the sky for more than 25 years. He has an amazing facility at his disposal for this very purpose. Director Moscati gives us a 101 on what a planetarium is.
It is a virtual reality environment. It's a place where we duplicate the night sky that you can see in your backyard through mechanical optical systems and or a digital projection system. The other way that I relate to a planetarium, I often call it a gymnasium for the mind. This is a place where we bring students to the classroom to learn about the universe.
This classroom features state-of-the-art technology that is adaptable for all learners.
Well, our planetarium has a lot of different tools that we use to engage students. We have a projection system that duplicates what you see in your own backyard. We also have a digital projection system that allows us to explore the universe as the scientists do. We're able to download real data sets, whether they be from weather satellites or space probes that are looking deep out into the universe. And we also have an adjoining classroom space where we have a digital video globe projector. Our third grade visitors who come to the planetarium take up the problem of how do you know if you're wishing upon a star or a planet. We might have a visiting group that are 8th grade students, and we might want to know how many stars are there in the universe. So we'll actually go through a sample activity and count the number of stars that are visible with our eye. That number, of course, falls short of the many millions that we imagine, and those stars come through because we view them through large telescopes with some sort of detecting devices. So this becomes really a learning laboratory. I like to treat our student visitors not as passive audience members, but as ones that are engaged in some sort of problem solving. So we use the universe as our vehicle to pick up skills that we would apply in life circumstances. I like to think that it's edutainment in many ways, but it is, again, curriculum that is focused on what our state standards are.
Lawrence can also simulate real events that skywatch.
76 trombones, a replica Main Street, a restored home, a fantastic museum. Music Man Square is a vibrant tribute to Meredith Willson and his musical influence on his hometown. Let's check it out.
76 trombones, a recording studio, a replica of River City Main Street, a first-rate museum. All of these amazing attractions are waiting for you at the Music Man Square in Mason City, Iowa. While many people may know that Meredith Willson wrote the musical The Music Man, it is worth the trip to the Music Man Square to learn more about the many life accomplishments of this Iowa native. Executive Director David Victorek recounts Wilson's local history and subsequent achievements.
Meredith Willson was born here in Mason City in 1902 and graduated from high school in 1919. And the Music Man Square reflects his life and his career and his successes in radio, television, and Broadway. Meredith Willson, as a young boy at 16, was discovered by a talent scout for John Philip Sousa, right here in Mason City in the Summer Municipal Community Band. And as such, when he graduated from high school in 1919, left for the big city of New York and played for 6 years in the John Philip Sousa Band. He then played for Arturo Toscanini in the New York Philharmonic. He played several pit orchestras in the Broadway houses in New York. He then made his way to Hollywood in California. He directed the San Francisco Orchestra. He was a classical musician as well as playing a lot of radio and early television.
After establishing himself, he decided to try his hand at writing a musical.
He always wanted to write a musical, and he was encouraged by his family and also by his friends in the music business to write about something he knew, so it would be authentic. And that's one of the reasons that the Music Man has been so sustaining to this day. It is performed by over 500 colleges, universities, music theater troupes all around the world every year. It is because of its authenticity. People enjoy the wholesomeness and the family values and the celebrations of the Midwest.
The people of our region are a busy bunch, and there are always many things to do throughout the year. Whether we're working to make our education system better, cheering for our favorite marching band, or increasing our vitality, the KSMQ region is definitely on the move. Well, today we're going to talk a little bit about the Gifted and Talented Symposium that is coming up in Austin. We have a couple of special guests. We have John Alberts from the Austin High School, and we have Wendy Behrens from the Minnesota Department of Education. Thanks to both of you for being here.
Well, thank you.
Well, let's start a little bit by giving folks an idea of what gifted and talented in general means. Wendy, will you take that one?
Thank you.
While there is no specific definition of gifted and talented, generally we're talking about kids who learn deeply, who learn quickly, and who need something just a little bit different than what is in the typical curriculum. We're talking about kids who do need some modification in terms of the amount of rigor and sometimes some additional supports as well.
Okay, and in a school body, about how many kids would that be? Is there a percentage generally?
Sure. The National Association for Gifted Children generally goes with a figure of 6% of the population. So, for instance, in the state of Minnesota, where we have about 820,000 students, we're talking about 53,000 statewide. And within the Austin district, we would be looking at 6% as well, across all types of student. There is no specific type of student that is the typical gifted learner.
Okay. Now at Austin High School, you guys have done a number of things recently with a little bit of an emphasis in this area through some support from a local foundation. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. Actually, in Austin Public Schools, we've done a number of things, and the Hormel Foundation is our local partner, and they've been very supportive of education. And one part of their focus in funding recently has been on gifted and talented education. And so what they've been able to do is give us funding to support our gifted and talented education in Austin. One of those things includes some gifted and talented intervention specialists at the elementary level. And so we have, at every one of our elementary sites, we have a person on staff whose role it is to help meet the needs of our gifted and talented learners on site. In addition to that, we also have 11 of our teachers getting a certification in gifted and talented education from St. Mary's University, 11 of those total, and that's through the foundation as well. And so teachers are not paying for the tuition or the books, and they're meeting in Austin, and so they're being supported in that way. We also are receiving some student opportunity support. There's a University of Minnesota Talented Youth Mathematics Program, or UMTIUMP it's called, where our Ellis and high school students are receiving college-level math, actually, at the Rochester Center, University of Minnesota Center. And they go Thursday nights, and so the foundation is picking up the tab on the tuition as well as the transportation over there. And so that becomes their math course. They're doing college-level algebra, actually, right now.
Oh, my goodness.
And then,
impressive.
And then there's a couple summer opportunities available for students as well through the foundation, the MIGHTY program, the Minnesota Institute for Talented Youth. There's a 2-week camp. And then finally, what we're here to talk about today is the first annual Hormel Foundation Gifted and Talented Symposium that will occur. And so that's some real specific things that the foundation has been doing to help support gifted and talented education in Austin.
Great. And so the symposium didn't just rise up from out of the air, but talk a little bit about how this idea developed and what you have on the table, what you hope to accomplish.
Well, I think I'll let Wendy take that because it really started, it's a collaborative between the Austin Public Schools and the Department of Education, but it was really, I think, in many ways, Wendy's lead on this.
Well, thank you, John. It's about 2 summers ago that I received a phone call from the Long Range Planning Committee for the Hormel Foundation, really looking for some ideas of how they might help to support gifted learners in the Austin.
Well, there has been a ton of preparation so far for the Albert Lea Blue Zone Vitality Project, and the community has finally kicked it off and has gotten everyone involved in the project, and we have a couple of special guests today. We have Chris Chalmers from Community Education, and we have Catherine Buboltz, who is one of the volunteers and coordinators for the project. Welcome to both of you for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Chris, let's start with you. For those who may not have heard of the Blue Zone Vitality Project, give us a nice overview of what this is all about.
Okay. Dan Buettner, National Geographic explorer and writer, has explored the world and found, with a team of researchers, has found 4 areas where people live longer, better. They live to be 100 good, active lives. And he wrote a New York Times best-selling book called The Blue Zones, and he's taken 9 common traits, and now they're trying to take an initiative. Can we take these 9 traits from these 4 different areas of the world and apply it to a city in the United States? And Albert Lea was selected to be this pilot site for this first and only project to date of this magnitude.
All right. So we're going to take these 9 principles, we're going to try to apply them to the people of the community and hope that they
add vital years to your lives. Our goal is to add 10,000 years of vital healthy lives to the people in Albert Lea.
All right, great. And I think that one of the key points that they emphasize in this project is it's not just living longer, it's living better too.
Yes, because no one wants to live to be 100 if you can't be moving and doing the things that you enjoy. This is all about being active and vital throughout all those years.
All right. So there was a lot of kind of behind-the-scenes preparation. They did some press conferences and some news has been dribbling out about this, but you had your huge kickoff. Tell us a little bit about that and how successful it was. The energy was just fantastic.
It was a great night for Albert Lea. Almost 1,300 people came together at our high school, and Dan Buettner, we had a number of representatives from the United Health Foundation and AARP were in town, and they were so impressed with the people of our area and the excitement over this project. And they really just set the tone for what's taking place right now.
All right. Now, Catherine, I want to hear a little bit about your personal interest in this project. I'm sure you heard about it, but what caused you to want to become involved?
Well, I wanted to be involved in the walking Moais. I'm involved in some Nordic walking classes that we do through community education, so I have an interest in walking. And we also were part of the kickoff that was in May, and we had about 100 people, and some of those were families, so probably more than 100 that signed up for the Walking Moai the night of the kickoff. Okay. And so we've got some fun, exciting things coming up planned with that as well.
Great. And why do you think something like this is so important to the community?
Well, I think for me personally, Chris and I were talking on the way over, and for me personally, it's helped me to form connections with other people in our community that I normally wouldn't even have connections with. And so that's a very important piece of it, and also the healthy aspect of it. I like that we're working towards becoming a healthier community as well.
Okay. Now at the kickoff you had a number of tables sprinkled throughout the cafeteria there, and people could sign up. But what does sign up mean? People are often so busy they're like, oh, I can't do one more thing on my list. What are these sign-up activities, and what will that mean to them? Can we walk through some of those? Sure. Catherine, maybe you want to start with the Walking Moai and explain what that is.
We had people sign up by neighborhood. We had broken down Albert Lea into different neighborhoods, and then we also brought surrounding areas in as well, where people could come together with neighbors or also through businesses if people wanted to sign up through small or large.
Well, LGA, or local government aid, is something that has been in the headlines quite a bit lately, especially with some action with the governor that impacted some of the communities in our region. And we have a couple of special guests here today to walk through some of this with us and share all of their great wealth of knowledge. Welcome, please, to Jim Herm, who is the city administrator for the city of Austin. And we have Dan Dorman, who is a former state legislator and the executive director of the Albert Lea Economic Development Agency. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Well, let's start with the basics. Let's help folks understand exactly what is LGA. Jim, you want to start?
Well, LGA, that's short for Local Government Aid. And it is a policy that was established back in the early 70s.
Back in the 70s?
As part of the Minnesota Miracle, I think. That's what it's referred to. There were a lot of changes back in that time. And it really is a standing state policy for decades now to somewhat equalize the economic base of cities throughout the state, so that you don't have very rich, high-service, low-tax communities perhaps in the urban area, and then low-service, high-tax communities out in the rural area, like some states are. Minnesota made that decision back decades ago to not be that way. And so it really is a very important program, and it's been very successful over the years.
It really has. The principle behind it, it's a property tax relief program designed to ensure that no matter where you live in the state, whether you're urban, suburban, or rural, that the same burden is felt by the taxpayer for basic government services. So that, you know, just because you live in a certain geographic area, you shouldn't benefit or have, you know, super low taxes relative to somebody else in another geographic area that has really high taxes because of where they live. So it's an attempt to equalize things, and we see other equalization formulas. Education has equalization formulas. The principle is that we all ought to share in the burden, we ought to share in the wealth of our state, and that the tax rates should be somewhat similar throughout the state.
Okay, and so this is kind of saying a basic level of services will be available to everyone. Is that correct? What kinds of services are typically funded through LGA?
You know, it depends, I guess, a little bit on where you're located. If you get in the metropolitan area, because of the Met Council provides things like sewer services, the airport, transit. So the libraries are county systems there, and so a little bit different in a metropolitan area than it is in Greater Minnesota. But in Greater Minnesota, darn near everything that a city like Austin or Albert Lea is partially subsidized by LG. The big ones, of course, would be fire and police protection.
Yeah, all of our general fund departments are partially covered through LGA. Our general fund consists of 54% of our general fund is local government aid.
Okay.
In there is property taxes and payment in lieu of taxes from us and utilities and permits and fees and so on. But 54% of those revenues come from local government aid.
Okay. Now, is it typical for this balancing act to take place when you're moving money from metropolitan areas out to rural communities? Does it always come essentially in our direction for the communities in our region?
Not necessarily. I mean, in the case of local government aid, I mean, it's a needs-based program. I mean, every city in the state technically qualifies. It just you run the formula. The formula looks at what it should cost to run a city on a per capita basis, and your property tax wealth. And so the formula decides, where that money is going to go.
Well, today we're going to talk a little bit about the North Iowa Band Festival, which is coming up here soon. And today our special guest is Colleen Young. She's with the Mason City Area Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to the program, Colleen.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Well, give us just a brief history of where did this festival come from? Whose idea was it? How long has the Chamber been doing it?
It actually started in 1936, believe it or not, when the Iowa State Bandmasters Association held their convention in Mason City. And it drew in 30 bands from the state of Iowa. And it was so wonderful for the city at that time, and everyone enjoyed it so much that they decided to do it again the next year. And it was actually started with the Chamber. It was the Chamber Secretary that was the co-founder of it. And I don't know if you remember Carlton Stewart's music store in Mason City. Carlton Stewart was the president of the Iowa Bandmasters Association in '36. So all these names are coming back of how this music all started in Mason City.
Oh, great.
And then, of course, they have invited Meredith Wilson throughout the years to visit as the Music Man, and Shirley Jones. And now this year we are celebrating our 71st anniversary.
Oh my goodness.
And you're going to do the math and say, okay, that doesn't add up. Well, they didn't have it for 3 consecutive years because of the war.
Okay.
So that's why it doesn't quite add up. But then they kicked it right back in again, and it's been going strong ever since.
That is a long time.
That's a long time. We were nowhere near a twinkle in our parents' eyes at that time. But in 1936, they had 1,300 marching students at that time, and about 30 bands. And last year, we had over 1,500 marching students.
Great.
So although some of the band numbers have lowered, we're down to about 20-some bands that march. The bands are a little bit larger, and of course that is due largely to the consolidations of schools these days.
Sure. So give us a sense of what a band festival is. There's a judging component to it, and you guys have added a ton of activities. Kind of give me a litany of events.
There is. It used to be a 4 or 5 day event. We have now narrowed it down to 2 days. It kicks in Thursday night. We have the kickoff for the entire weekend, and we have the municipal band play and the middle school bands. And that is when we honor our sponsors each year for the event. And if I can remind everybody that this event is absolutely free to the public. Absolutely free. There are no ticket sales. There's no seat reservations or anything. There's no beer garden. And we rely solely on our sponsors to put this event on every year. So we're very thankful for them. But we just have a wonderful time. It's all about music. And a great deal of planning goes into planning the music. But of course the highlight is the parade, which is on Saturday at 10 a.m. and it begins downtown Mason.
Well, today we're going to talk a little bit about an event that takes place in Winona, Minnesota, called the Great Dakota Gathering and Homecoming. And we have a couple of special guests. We have Bill McNeil, we have Terry Goldman. Thanks so much for being part of the program.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us.
Bill, we're going to start with you since you've been in on the ground floor. What exactly is this event and how did it get started?
The Dakota Gathering is our annual sort of centerpiece event for the Winona-Dakota Unity Alliance. It all started actually in 2003 and 2004. In 2004, the cities along the upper Mississippi celebrated the sesquicentennial of the Grand Riverboat Flotilla of 1854. And Winona was involved in that. Our city leaders, in watching the plans develop up and down the river, realized that the American Indian perspective was being totally ignored in the whole event. And we thought that since they were the original inhabitants and the 1854 riverboat flotilla was basically advertising the stolen land for immigration, that we really ought to have the Dakota back to Winona and deal with the issues of the real history. So what we did was, for a year and a half, we organized trips to the reservations to convince the tribes that this was a worthwhile thing to do. And then at the first gathering, we had a Desmond Tutu-style Truth and Reconciliation Circle. And we brought government leaders on a national level, a state level, county level, and city level, as well as religious leaders from our community to hear the truth of the truth-telling. And we had a significant number, 10 or 12 elders of the Dakota nations come to tell the truth of history. And so that basically started with an attempt to foster reconciliation and remember history. I came to Winona in '81 and realized then that the Dakota were here at all. And if you talk to people in our community, they have little idea of the true history. And one of our goals has always been the truth-telling of history.
And give us a picture of what the environment looked like before white settlement came in.
That's tough.
In a minute or less. No.
Pristine. Central Minnesota was savanna prairies. The big woods started in central Minnesota. The Dakota were basically in northern Minnesota until 1750, and then moved down to the Twin Cities about that time as the Ojibwe came in. This was a verdant hunting grounds with buffalo and elk and deer, and it was widely used as a hunting ground.
You have enjoyed this look back on some of the stories about people, places, and events that have been our privilege to share. Wishing you and your family a Happy New Year, I'm your host, Stephanie Passingham. Good night.
Production of this program is made possible in part through a grant from the Blandin Foundation.